Since the beginning of time, I have always loved drawing myself in other styles. I suppose it serves as the same type of fun cosplay and costume wearing would serve for others. Researching and studying the work of artists is key to starting out and finding your own style and developing it. So you find an artist's work that you like, and you find what specific parts of their style it is you like, and you either consciously or subconsciously implement that in some way into your technique. It's a key element to artists finding their styles. Studying the artwork of an artist you like can sometimes be very difficult. Not every artist has a how to draw book or a video demonstrating their technique. So join me in this new series where we tackle iconic styles, genres, and worlds and point out the specific traits that make them what they are. Now, I am a sucker for comic books, especially the classics. And with it feeling like Spider-Man season with a number of announcements and No Way Home just around the corner, I thought it would be fun to try illustrating myself the way the old webhead's first illustrator did, in the style of comic book artist Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko was an American comic book artist and writer, best known as the artist and co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. Ditko studied at the Cartoonist and Illustrator School in New York under Batman artist Jerry Robinson. He began working professionally in 1953 as an inker. When it comes to Spider-Man, Stan Lee had Jack Kirby draw up some pages, but it didn't fit Lee's vision of the character. And thus, it fell to Ditko, who developed the visuals Lee was looking for. Another fun fact is that Ditko created the iconic small upper left corner featuring Spider-Man's face along Marvel's name and the comic's price, which became a staple for Marvel Comics cover design for decades. Now, I truly suggest reading more on Steve Ditko's career if you have the time. It is truly fascinating, especially if you're an artist yourself. Now on to actually making some art. Fortunately, I have a few reprinted issues of Spider-Man comics Ditko illustrated, one including my favorite Spidey villain of them all, Mysterio, in his debut issue as the super retro sci-fi villain with that iconic fishbowl. I mean, just look at the guy.
I am Mysterio, and I'm going to destroy you.
Okay, maybe I like him because he looks like Leonard Nimoy as Mr. Spock. Anyways, with my reference in hand, I jumped in head first without too much analysis of Ditko's style, just to get in and see what I could find. So I whipped up a sketch of a sort of cover where perhaps I am mistakenly revealed as the true identity of Spider-Man by the awesome Mysterio, and transferred it over to the iPad for inking and color. And as a finishing touch, I threw in some speech bubbles and some Marvel cover elements. So let's see what we learned along the way. Now, right off the bat, I hit a wall in regards to portraying myself in a way that melded well with Ditko's world. Not a single male character other than Jameson had any facial hair, and none of them had long hair. I have both. So I opted for cutting my hair into that 60s crew cut with a little more length, while getting my reference for that mustache from good old Jameson, and just winged the beard. And after recording this video, it turns out I found a whole damn book of Steve Ditko's artwork in the Amazing Spider-Man Masterworks collection that I had and didn't look for. The second thing that I think is worth noting is that my reference is coming from a remastered print of the original issues. And I'm not sure if that really impedes on Ditko's actual style and look, but it's something to note. A key element to Ditko's work was the quick and efficient manner of his inking. It is full of perfect imperfections while efficiently illustrating what needs to be seen. So although I was working digitally, I conditioned myself to not rely too heavily on the undo and redo features of Procreate, and to embrace that natural feel. When looking for my variant's wardrobe, I looked at page 3 of Amazing Spider-Man issue number 13, which featured various characters in 60s era clothing and how Ditko portrayed them. Now, you might have noticed in the time-lapse how much I played around with the smoke line effects and Mysterio's dome lines. It actually looks kinda cool and animated, but boy was I getting pissed off. I don't know if it was an issue of working digitally versus traditionally, but boy, I was near the point of snapping that Apple Pencil in half. So I did what any person would do in that position. Went and played some Halo Infinite, which pissed me off even more, so that by the point of coming back to the swirl lines at 2 a.m., it didn't feel so bad anymore. But when it came time to coloring, I knew I had to keep the key bright colors featured throughout the comic. A bright yellow background, a nice red, a blue, a green, essentially all 12 primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. But when looking at the cover versus the inside panels, I noticed the cover featured a sort of semi-soft shading on its elements. So I chose to meld the two and only add the soft shading to that frustrating smoke, which I think made it look better. An overall issue I was having, more noticeably while inking, was scale. With the technological advantage of being able to zoom in while inking, it felt like it impeded on the natural feel Ditko might have had while working on a canvas with a physically locked scale. Now we can go on and on and on with all these things, so let's sort of quickly fly through a list of things to consider if you yourself want to go ahead and try and tackle Steve Ditko's style. Alright, let's start with how Ditko illustrates his characters. The heads have a very square shape initially and are the same width for the most part as the neck when looking front on, leaving the chin and jawline as sort of the place that differentiates the head from the neck. The eyes consist of a top lash line, a pupil, which sometimes has a white dot that defines the reflection of light, and a bottom lash line. Sometimes the bottom lash line's corners are all that are visible. The base of the nose, front on, is sort of the shape of a W and a half. Maybe a subtle line above that differentiates the tip of the nose from the bridge of the nose. The inner edge of the brow line sometimes tends to connect to the top lash line of the eye. Occasionally, the middle of the mouth line is sometimes left blank. The bottom lip line is always very prominent and sometimes is in the shape of a sort of subtle W. Dark hair is mostly black with only the color showing in the highlight bars. Feminine eyes tend to have a conjoined upper and lower lash at the outer end. A feminine face also always tends to have a defined upper lip that connects to the mouth, and the lower lips are more defined and rounded and full. Female characters tend to have few face lines, mostly used to emphasize cheeks and cheekbones. The older the character, the more face lines they have. Now looking at the general construction of Ditko's work, texture is very suggestive and not at all precise. If you look at Spider-Man's webs, or the smoke, or Mysterio's suit for that matter, it's all very suggestive in the way it handles texture, but it's efficient. The coloring of the panels is fairly flat, with black areas and thicker lines serving to emphasize lighting. The color palette is pretty limited, so stick to primary, secondary, and maybe tertiary colors for the most part, not much more. So we can go on and on analyzing Steve Ditko's work, but at the end of the day, if you're looking to do a piece in Ditko style, my suggestion would be to come up with a composition of what you want to draw. For example, maybe a guy who's terrified and he's in the water. Look up Ditko's work and see if you find a panel of his that features a terrified character. Study their expression and the line work, and find another panel with water in it and see how Ditko used lines to give that water form and elemental qualities. It still just takes studying and research. My best advice is to only look into how Ditko tackles variables that are relative to the illustration you are trying to make, and not how Ditko handles everything. So, how do you think I did? Personally, I think I could do a little bit better and play around with the style a bit more. But yeah, maybe I'll tackle this style again when the new Doctor Strange movie's closer to coming out. Regardless, I hope you found this video helpful and insightful. This is the first of a series of styles and techniques I'd love to tackle, and I've got a large list of many more to come, so stick around because if you like this content, then face it, Tiger, you've just hit the jackpot.